You got to be creative in this type of market and this type of economy, because a lot of the times it's not going to be as straightforward as you saw, but a couple zigzags is not a problem. 90% of millionaires become so through real estate.
You get to a builder and they're like, it's only 5,000 down. And you're like, only 5K?
I think the number one option just is co-buying. Like you said, like if I don't have credit, but you have good credit, like let's combine. If I have the income and you don't, let's support each other and get into stuff.
What's going on, guys? It's your girl, Eboni Elle, and I'd like to welcome you for another episode of the Legacy Lounge. I am super excited for this season. Season 1 was crazy. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch it after this episode, because we are setting intention. It's a new season, and as the snow melts, you start to unlock and melt off the goals that you froze for the beginning half of the year. And for many of us, one of those goals is real estate. So I'm joined today by the one and only Jahmar Thompson. Just to tell you a little bit about Jahmar. Jahmar is a realtor, and he's a really good realtor. The reason why I think this is important is because there are realtors who only sell, and then there's realtors who sell and educate, but also prepare. And so I love him because his content is great for people who are just getting into the market. He has his own story about how he got into the market. But before I spoil it, let me just welcome Jahmar. Jahmar, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Always happy to be here. This is a great opportunity. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Just to kick off, for anybody who doesn't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So as you said, I'm Jahmar Thompson, real estate agent, but that's my occupation. I am a family man. I got 2 kids, my wife and everything. Loving family. Grew up in Brampton, actually, so you know how that goes. You know how that goes. But yeah, just looking to educate, provide value. I've been an investor myself, so I'm just looking to give you guys the game on all that stuff and help educate the community and hope you guys level up from it, So
I love that.
yeah.
So you talked about that, the fact that you want to help people just get into real estate and level up. Tell us about how you first got into real estate. Like, when were you first introduced? Was it an opportunity, a goal, a mentor, or was it just something you felt like you had to do?
I think it was a combination. So it was just kind of like an aha moment where I was like, you know what? I don't want to be sitting at a desk job for too long. I kind of want to build my own wealth through real estate. And so I was looking at investing in real estate, ended up purchasing a pre-construction project. Bad move, but we'll get into that. And then I decided, you know what, let me just cut out the middleman. I'm just going to become a real estate agent myself and build the wealth through that, and then help educate others so they don't go through the same situation as me.
I love that. Yeah. I think there's so much power in storytelling. Like, my story, the reason why I got into finance was because I was broke myself, had to dig myself out of the hole. And then after digging myself out of the hole, I was like, and not even really, just like, I can dig myself out, so I think I can help dig others out. And so this is really important because it just means that you have a different outlook, right? Because you have skin in the game from actually going through that process and being an investor yourself. So let's talk a little bit about the mistakes. You just mentioned one, you said we're going to get into it later. Yeah. Walk us through your journey in the industry and as an investor. What were some mistakes you made that you could warn maybe your younger self about if you could go back?
Okay. So again, I first invested in my first property was a pre-construction project. I don't want to sway people against pre-construction, but I do say be weary of them. I always thought, pre-construction was the best opportunity to just get your foot in. I later realized that I spent way more money than I need to on actually getting my foot in the door. I wish I could just tell myself, just sit back, wait for the right person to kind of guide you on the process. Because I think another thing that I didn't really have was a mentor in the game that could really put me on, right? I didn't really know too many realtors that looked like me. So I felt like I didn't really have anybody that can be like, yo, help me out. I'm trying to do this, right? Try to find a mentor that's able to guide you. Manage your finances correctly.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing. Manage your money, because it's going to come back and hit you later on when you're ready to make those big moves and you can't do it. So
I love that. I actually, I am always in awe of pre-construction. I'm in awe of pre-construction because for many people in our community, it seems like the entry point. Yeah. You get to a builder and they're like, it's only 5,000 down. And you're like, only 5K? And so people are like, okay, that's amazing. Yeah. So homeownership seems realistic and like achievable. And then it's like, okay, but now you have to give 30K in 90 days. You're like, okay, I should be able to do it. And a lot of us end up in a bind where we didn't do it properly. It's not really achievable. And we don't do the math. Like, it's like quick deal math to say like, okay, I only wanted to put down 10%.
Yeah.
But by the end of this, I'm actually putting down 20% and doing it so rapidly. A funny story, I don't think I've ever told anybody this, but one day, Marjan and I, we go look at this pre-construction, like it's like a Ballymore Homes. It's like nice. It's nice. I can't remember the price of it, but it was cheap.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this is a lick. And they're like, yeah, it's $10,000 for signing. And all you have to do is just sign this paperwork. It's like non-committal. And then you can think about it. Lots are selling fast. And I was like, Marj, what do you think? He's like, yeah, I think it's pretty good, you know? The difference between us is that Marjan's very strategic and I'm very spontaneous. So I signed the paper and Marjan was like, what are you doing? Sign the paper. And I'm thinking about it. And honestly, I think because of where I am, you do the deal math, but then also it was just that everything went wrong. And I'm a very spiritual person. So as soon as like I messaged my lawyer and she's like, this went to my junk. I said, holy smokes, if this went to your junk and it was due days ago, I just feel like it's not for me. But I think a lot of people don't have that intuition or they don't have that guidance or the knowledge. And I think it's important because you can get into resale. Despite public opinion that you can't and it's not possible, sometimes resale with the right opportunity and even the right support is perfectly possible and is more cost effective than pre-construction. So I love that story. I think it can definitely guide people. Now, when it comes to your story, you mentioned like, okay, there wasn't at that time anybody that looked like you in real estate. You didn't have a mentor who was actively doing that to say like, okay, like you should steer clear of this. Did you have anybody around you though that gave you financial or emotional support while you were trying to build this?
So my mom was able to provide family assistance. My wife's parents were also able to provide that as well. But I think we still had to like buckle down ourselves to kind of like build it, right? So there was times where it was like, all right, the guys are hitting you up and you're like, yo, we're trying to do this. And it's like, ooh, honestly, like that 5% that I owe in 30 days is closing up soon, you know? So there's opportunities that I had to like sacrifice just to kind of get to this point. So it was a interesting time to say the least. But yeah, support was definitely there.
I think that's important because another thing that I find when I look into our community, some of our community members don't always have the support. And there's different reasons, right? Like you may have somebody who may not have the finances to support, but they have the credit and they're still skeptical, right? Or there's somebody who may not have the finances or the credit, but they can give you the emotional support because honestly, like home ownership is just one of those things. Like I just renewed a mortgage and honestly, I just like, you're like cheese because it's just like you're always on edge. Anything can go wrong. Somebody checks your credit. Somebody steals your credit card. You're like, what is going on? So it is a scary emotional roller coaster. And sometimes people don't have those people to go to say like, I'm going through this.
For sure.
So I think that's really, really important. And as I reflect on our community and think about other communities, some other communities have a head start.
Yeah.
And I think that's because I call it the big three. They've got credit, they've got income, they've got down payment. Many people in our community are missing one, or like I said, they're missing all three.
Yeah.
What do you think is really behind that gap for our community?
So I think it's a heavy question, first of all. I think there's a lot to it, and that could be like a whole segment on its own. But I think overall, a few points I would say, and this is not applicable to everybody, but I do think that in our community specifically, there's a lack of access to information, right? And when I say information, I mean like, first of all, when I purchased my real estate project, I didn't have anybody that I could reach out to, right? I think there's a lack of intergenerational, not just wealth, but also knowledge, right?
I like that.
Sometimes, you know, we have family members that haven't purchased a property yet. So like the next offspring that are looking to purchase a property, they don't have that access to go to the bank and mom and dad to get the fund for the down payment, right? So they also don't have the knowledge of how to go through the real estate process because no one else did it before them. So they have to learn it on their own, right? So I was fortunate enough to have that opportunity where I can get the fund from mom and dad. But a lot of people don't have that. I think another thing is just in our community, debt is crazy, right? Credit cards are scary. Our parents always tell us, don't use a credit card. Don't do this. Use your debit. You don't want to charge up debt and all that stuff. And as much as it's been such a fear and trauma that they've inflicted on us, it's something that hindered us.
Yeah.
Right? Because now we're using our debit card, we're using our credit card for emergencies. That's subjective.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when I went to university, I got a credit card in my pocket. My mom's like, "You just for emergencies." I was like, "All right, cool." My scholarship ran out, funds were loose. I was like, "All right, let me just swipe this, pull out money from the bank on a credit card."
Yeah.
No knowledge, you know what I mean? So that financial literacy, I didn't get that, right? And I also think when we're talking about systemic issues, we're talking about lower average income wages, right? We're talking about the wealth gap
Yeah.
that we see in the Black community. You know, a lot of the times we aren't making the same amount of money and we don't have the same amount of opportunities. So our mortgages or our qualifications are a lot lower than what they're supposed to be.
Yes.
So we're getting pushed out of the city into specific areas that fit our budget or our price range, right? So I think between all of those factors, amongst others, I think kind of hold us back from being able to get into homeownership.
Yeah.
But again, it's not applicable to everybody.
Not everybody.
But, you know, those are some of the things that I've commonly seen.
Okay, so I think you raised some amazing points. And yes, it's not applicable to everybody, but there were so many gems that you dropped in there, right? The first one being the fear of debt. Because my dad used to say, don't even use it. And like, as soon as you use it, pay it off. And I'm like, at that time, he's like, you know, they don't even like me that much because I paid off before. And I'm like, now I know it's because to them, you're not using the card, right? Because every time they report, you're always at either the same balance or a negative balance. But I think that plays a role in, one, how we use debt to build our credit.
Yeah.
And I think it also plays a role in like the fear of having such a major debt, which is a mortgage. Tell us a little bit about that and why it is such a hindrance for us long term.
I think it's a fear, first of all, just because, again, like what we've seen in our community is high debt, maxing out.
Yeah.
And that turns into affordability issues, qualification issues, stuff like that. But I think what we missed out on in our community is how to leverage that debt to use it to build assets.
Yes.
And to gain credit. I have a lot of individuals that I know didn't get any credit until they started getting a phone or started paying utilities and stuff like that. But they were so scared of getting a credit card. And, you know, a lot of the times we think, okay, if I don't have credit, I can't have bad credit.
Yes.
But that's not the flex.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have to use that. You have to use that credit, that debt, to leverage into something else so you can get access to different assets and stuff like that you could use to help build your wealth and the generational wealth that comes with it. So
I love that. I think it makes me think about like when it comes to support as well and knowledge transfer. This is going to be a weird question to ask you, but I'm excited to ask you because I'm excited to put you on the spot. When I think of what a realtor offers, for me, I think a really good realtor offers more than being able to facilitate the sale or purchase of a home. Given everything that we've talked about, wealth gap and all, what are some of the unique characteristics that you bring to your clients and the community as a realtor?
That's a good question. I think for me specifically, I've been through the struggles in the beginning of trying to obtain real estate and not know how. So what I bring is just that experience and knowledge and information to provide to those individuals that have just no clue of where to start, right? And I get it, this industry could be looked on as a negative thing because, you know, there's a lot of money that's involved and a lot of money that they claim that we make. And we do make a lot of money, but a lot of that goes to taxes. That's a whole nother topic. But at the same time, it's like, I'm driven by integrity. Once you close on that property, it's between you and that bank. The realtor's not there. The lawyer might be there just in case something happens. I understand that there's more to it. And I don't want to put you in a sticky situation where you end up calling me and being like, hey, like, I wish I had known this, because I've been in that situation where I wish I would have known certain things. I would have made proper moves. So I think just for me, that integrity part, and looking out for your best interest and trying to make you level up and create that generational wealth for you, your family to come, and others.
I love that. So if you had a toolkit, this is a toolkit to getting my first keys. What would be the top 3 tools you'd give and say that our community needs access to start getting those first keys?
So in that toolkit, I'd probably have like a credit building thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have a budget and financing opportunity there because you need to save for that down payment. And then another thing I'll just throw in there is mentorship.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's important. That guidance, we don't speak to the right people, I find. You know, it's not always our aunts and uncles that are going to give us the right information. I think it's the professionals that we need to rely on. So, yeah.
I love that. And I think that's why having a great realtor is amazing when it comes to reflecting on your toolkit. So, okay, for people who don't have a traditional pathway into real estate, right? We talked about wealth gap. We talked about needing to build credit. And I did talk about the fact that you can stack, right? Like if you and I are like looking at a property and you have the credit and I have the down payment, right? We can collaborate now as friends and say, let's just buy this property together.
100%.
What are some non-traditional ways to people getting into ownership? I know some options are like co-buying, rent to own, family support. How would you guide them on these different pathways?
I think the number one option just is co-buying. Like you said, you know, like if I don't have credit, but you have good credit, you know, like let's combine. If I have the income and you don't, you know, let's support each other and get into stuff, right? I do want to be wary and just let you guys know that a lot of the time when you're doing that, there are two different types of ownerships within that, right? So you have joint tenancy and then you have tenancy in common. Joint tenants is essentially where both of the partners or whoever is involved in this transaction has equal shares of the property and also survivorship. So if one of you dies, then the ownership just goes to the next individual. Whereas tenancy in common is unequal shares can be provided. So you could have 60%, I could have 40%. And if I die, that share doesn't go to you. It goes to the estate and gets passed down that way. So if you're a business person or if you have blended family or if you're just in it with friends, you're probably going to want to look towards tenancy in common versus joint tenancy. And I think that's something that's important when you're looking at investing with other individuals.
100%. I love that. Okay, so we're getting to the wrap. We're getting to the close, okay?
Yes.
When it comes to building a legacy through real estate, what's one message you'd want to have the audience take away, especially those who feel like homeownership is completely out of reach?
So I think first, I just want to say 90% of millionaires become so through real estate. And I get it. It's a difficult situation sometimes, but you got to be creative in this type of market and this type of economy because a lot of the times it's not going to be as straightforward as you saw, but you know, a couple zigzags is not a problem. You know? Ask the right questions and speak to the right people.
I love that. And obviously connect with Jahmar if you haven't gotten that idea yet. I think this is really important because as we go into a new season, you know, we're well into 2026, we're going into 2027. There's not many ways to build wealth anymore. And as I say that, I know that somebody will say like, people are building wealth selling like toes on TikTok, right? But like at the same time, it's hard to build sustainable wealth. When we talk about things like legacy and generational wealth, I talk to people about the fact that this is something that we say commonly, but I don't think people reflect on how hard it is. Like $7 million is a generation and a half if they live modestly.
Crazy.
Right? And so I think leveraging real estate and opportunities, and I think you mentioned something, co-buying is the number one non-traditional option, but also it's the best way for us to come together as a people so that we can advance all of our goals. Because once the community can start working together, we have our lawyers, we get into this property, now we have capital to start getting into real estate on our own, right?
Exactly.
So this has been great. We're definitely going to have you back for those other segments we talked about. Like there's so much to unpack. But Jahmar, I want to thank you so much for joining us today on the Legacy Lounge. And as we wrap, for those who want to connect with you to understand how they can leverage those first keys, where can they find you?
You can find me at Jahmar Thompson Real Estate. That's my Instagram page. Contact me there. We could talk.
Perfect. Well, I hope that you all took lots of notes. This is super exciting as we get into spring for 2026, and it is a perfect opportunity for you to lock in for home ownership, either maybe rushing for the end of this year or planning for future years. But I am so excited that you joined us today, and until you join us for the next episode, we're signing off, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Peace.